We're back with another tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to send for approval and the way to actually finalize the score sheet that we have here in front of us. So, just leaving off where we were before, we had shown how to enter in non-rostered players in the previous video, so I'm just going to delete this here because this is something that we're not using. That would have just been for a substitute. You can see our video on how to add in player achievements and substitutes in another video here on our channel. So right now, as it sits, we've got all of the scores in. We've got a couple subs that this team had brought in and used, and we identified what games those subs had shot in. And now this score sheet is ready to be sent for approval. Right now, this score sheet is not finalized. So the standings online and the scores have not been registered into the league standing sheet or into the player statistics yet. The only time that happens is when the score sheet has been approved. And the process for approval of a score sheet is one player who fills out the score sheet will then send the score sheet for approval to the other team scorekeeper, at which time the other team scorekeeper will have the opportunity to review what the first scorekeeper has put in, and if what the first scorekeeper has put in is accurate, the second team scorekeeper can basically approve the score sheet, and at that time the scores are all finalized. So the process of doing that is as Jack Schmo here, we are signed in, and we have now input the scores for this particular match. Everything looks good, and we are ready to send this off to the opposing team scorekeeper, which is Joe Schmo here, for approval. So now that the scores are all input, it's pretty self-explanatory. We just go and we select send for approval. Again, I'm doing this with the mobile view up because I think many of you will be accessing this stuff via mobile device. So I will just select send for approval, and it asks, am I sure I want to continue? Because once you select OK on this, the score sheet at that point can't be edited. So I will hit OK, and now the score sheet has been sent off for approval. And if we were to go to scores, we were to click on score sheet, you can see right now that there is a yellow flag that's in the middle, and that basically means that the score sheet is in flux, and basically it's waiting for approval from the second team scorekeeper. And once that scorekeeper has approved the score sheet, that individual, this flag here, will become a checkered flag, meaning that that match has actually been completely completed. So if I minimize this here and I go into Joe Schmo's email account, right now I'm in Jack Schmo's, as you can see. If I go to Joe Schmo's email account, now I'm in Joe Schmo. There should be an email from CompuSport after I refreshed that comes up as scorekeeping. And basically, anybody who is a scorekeeper will get this email if they were the ones that did not input the scores into the match card. And basically, what it's asking is for you to review the score sheet and check it out. So basically what we can do here is click the link right out of the email to go to the CompuSport website. So it basically says, here's the league that we're part of, the league portal that we're part of, Midwest Coin Concepts Fall Pool. And then here is the person who entered the scores and what team they shoot on against our team, the Benton Station Marksmen. And it tells you when the match was played and time. And basically says you've got to log in and review what that individual has imported for you to be able to approve or deny. So if I go back and I log in as Joe Schmo into CompuSport, we then will be able to approve this score sheet. So I'm going to log out as Jack Schmo currently, and I'm going to log in as Joe Schmo. We click on our match by we select our match by clicking on it, and then we click on scores here. And basically what this person has the ability to do is to look this match over now. They don't have the ability to change anything. I can click all around here and nothing is active, so that means that Joe Schmo cannot correct anything that Jack Schmo, so Joe Schmo from Benton Station, who needs to approve this score sheet, cannot correct anything that Jack Schmo inputted. Okay? So down here you have the capability to either accept, reject, or close, basically close the match card out, but that's not important to us. So you can accept or reject. Accepting the match means everything in here looks great, and that's all that you needed. And once you click this, the match then becomes finished. Right now it says is not finished. The match then would become finished, and the stats would be updated. But for argument's sake, let's say that, you know what, it actually wasn't Heather that got this ERO. Let's say it was Kurt that got the ERO instead. So we need to reject this score sheet because Jack Schmo did not put in the stuff the way that it was supposed to be. So all the scores look good. It's just that a player feed is off, let's say. You could do this in case the scores happen to be incorrect as well, put in here. But in our case, let's say the scores all look good. It's just that Heather did not get the RO and Kurt did. So what we would want to do in this process is click reject, and then it's going to ask you, why are you rejecting the score sheet? And the reasoning why we're rejecting the score sheet is because Heather did not get the ERO, but Kurt did in round 4. So we would just write that explanation. So there it says Heather did not get ERO in round 3 and Kurt had an ERO in round 4. So we would hit OK. Now the score sheet has been rejected, as you can see up here. And what would happen here is that if you go back to these players' email inboxes, you would see an email from Joe. You would see an email that would come through basically saying that the score sheet has been rejected and offering the reason why. So if I go back to Joe Schmo's email account, I'll refresh his email account. You see right now there's nothing there, because we rejected that score sheet. Joe Schmo rejected Jack Schmo's score sheet. But if we go to Jack Schmo's email account, you can see he's got a new message. And that new message is for game approval. And if he opens that message, the message basically says that the user Joe Schmo has rejected the score sheet against Duck Stirpers played on this date. And then it offers the reason why. And there's the message that we typed in. Heather did not get ERO in round 3, and Kurt had an ERO in round 4. So basically, what happens here is that the first team that input the scores could then go back in and make that correction, and then they could resubmit the score sheet for approval. So let's do that. Also with this, when a score sheet is rejected, an automated reply gets sent not only to the player in which the score sheet is rejected to, so meaning Jack inputted the scores, Joe said the scores were not correct and stated a reason why. Therefore, Jack got an email back from CompuSport saying Joe denied that. An email at the same time also gets sent to the league director. And the league director then can have some oversight to make sure that this issue is getting resolved. So if you go and click on the link for CompuSport, it would bring you to the web page for CompuSport. In our case, what I'll do is log out of Joe Schmo's account, and I'll log back in as Jack Schmo. So now I've relogged in as Jack Schmo. We can go back to this match, select it by clicking on it, click on scores, and here's the message. Heather did not get an ERO in round 3 and Kurt had an ERO in round 4. So what the system for CompuSport has done now is re-allowed editing to occur. Since we were the ones who sent this for approval initially, we now can re-edit the sheet to basically match up what error was stated down here in the reason. So what we'd want to do is take Heather's ERO away in round 3. We simply would just click the hyphen that would remove that. We then would add an ERO in round 4 to Kurt. And then what we would do is simply send for approval. We send that match for approval, and then the process just simply starts back over again. Now if we go back to Joe Schmo's email account, here's a new message from CompuSport, and basically that message is the same as before. And it just says we've entered the score against Benton Station. We can now look again to see if it's been inputted correctly. So now if we go back and I log back out and I just simply log back in as Joe Schmo, there we go. So now we can get back into our score sheet by again selecting the match that we were part of and then clicking on score. And then we could now see that the ERO for Heather has been removed from round 3 and an ERO for Kurt has been added in round 4. If since that corrects the issue that we had laid out, we simply would hit accept. And now the match has officially been accepted. So this match now has been removed from this area that we see because this is waiting score sheets, and we are no longer waiting on that score sheet. So if we were to go back to search and we were to go to say by date, which we currently were on, and as you can see, our match here between Duck Stirpers and Benton Station Marksmen has a checkered flag in the middle of the two teams underneath the verses, and that indicates that that match has officially been finished, and it shows finished here at the top. That then means that the stats are now put in, and you could then look at people's individual stats and yada yada yada. All of that information then is updated. So hopefully this has helped you out with regards to how to do the process. Again, not too difficult. I think that once teams get in here and you're able to see this firsthand, you'll be able to understand it quite easily. So that is the advantage of having both teams have a scorekeeper, because then those sheets can just get finalized pretty much immediately as soon as it gets submitted and the other team's able to review it. Otherwise, for instance, if one team who happens to have a scorekeeper decides to input the scores and the other team does not have a scorekeeper, well, then the match isn't going to be finished until the league operator gets in there and is able to review all the matches one by one to verify that those matches have the scores input, and then the scores are correct. So ultimately, to speed up the process, it's best if both teams have scorekeepers registered and able to view this information and then be able to approve it as quickly as they can. Because then that way those stats and standings and reports can get updated in a lot quicker a fashion, much before all the league sheets get in. to be able to update the league as a whole. So there you have it, inputting scores and accepting and rejecting score sheets here in CompuSport.